Well, good morning, everyone. As Carla already mentioned, we're here today to talk a little bit more about the part two to Parent Voices from part one that we had last month. And I just want to say I'm really honored to be here with you all, and I'm really honored to be here with my parents from Parent Voices. I know that there's other parents in the room who have also made it out, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and represent. We heard the feedback from the first section of this part one and two, and what the feedback was really wanting to hear more from the parents directly and kind of engaging them as part of the conversation and how we can do a better job in hearing from them and receiving the information and implementing it into our work. So with that being said, today we're going to be hearing from some parent leaders. From there, we're going to be asking them some questions and then dividing into groups and being able to kind of have some time for reflection and a discussion as a group. I encourage you to please be open-minded and hear from the parents also, and really think mindfully about what it is that they're sharing. With that being said, I want to kind of dive right in. The first parent, I'm going to walk over this way to be next to them, is a parent who's been with Parent Voices for a couple years now. Her name is Lucy Paz. She's a great mom, very hard worker, has been someone who I have really come to appreciate. And we're going to hear a little bit about her story and how she came to join Parent Voices, and then I'll ask her a little question to kind of fuel some thoughts. So Lucy, would you like to share how you came to be with Parent Voices?
Yeah. Okay. I hope everybody can hear me. My voice is bad today. Okay, I'm sorry. First, I want to say thank you to Janelle. I feel very welcoming for everybody to be here. I'm glad. But the big reason why I'm here is we really need a lot of support, but we need to unify each other. We need to know that we're here to really do changes and help our kids or not. One of the big reasons makes me be part of is when I went to Sacramento and I see how hard it is for not just me, everybody, to be able to be getting affordable daycare and a really quality daycare for your children. One of the reasons that I feel so supportive is I feel like since I get the services, my life changed. I be able to work, make more money, start getting my paychecks, and of course support my kids. I'm a single mother. And I'm proud to say San Mateo helped me a lot to be where I am right now. And Forces, of course, changed my life. When I just walked in there, I was having no car, no money, and a lot of dreams. And right now I can say I feel like really touched from them to start also a new career in my life. I'm going to school for early childhood education right now, and I really want to help kids too. Why? It's not just on a speech, because we really need to take care of them. We really need to focus on be kind, be super honest with them, and teach them really good values. Our society right now is break from so many different things, internet, media, but we need to survive being unified and being real. It's time to do and take some action. Probably sounds like a speech that you guys hear every time, but from my heart I can say I'm gonna do my part. And thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, for sharing that. One really quick question that I wanted to ask, and then we can have some time to discuss as a group, is what was the one thing that you would say really hooked you in to engage you as a parent for Parent Voices and also just as part with your agency?
Definitely my kids. I want them to have a better future. And if I'm a leader, they're going to become leaders. And if I'm proactive and do things right for them, they're going to follow me. And also, I want to make, like I said, an impact and help everybody. When I said everybody, our community in San Mateo is growing so much, and sometimes it's like nobody have parking spot, right? So what we need to do is start getting unified and start getting the love together again to help each other. So if we get that, we're gonna really make some big changes. And we need the support of everybody. And one of the reasons why I said I wanna be part of the Parent Voices, I wanna, say something, and I want everybody to hear me. So when I went to Sacramento, I feel very frustrated and see how hard it is for Forces. I'm saying the director, to try to speak with the people from over there, the big government and big people, and they don't even give you a chance to talk with them sometimes. So it's very frustrated, but they need to hear us. We need to unify, and we need to do some actions right now. Why? Because these kids are our future. We cannot have them just in any whatever place. No. Daycare ladies, they need to have the support, the money, the right and great environment so their kids have a better future. And like First Fight California said, it's very important these 5 years. So we have to start doing more actions and no more talking. When I'm saying that is because always the new government comes and say, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, but what you're doing right now. So thank you, and that's it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. So with that being said, I would like for us to break out into small groups and to have a conversation of 3 or 4. There's going to be a question up here on the slide, which, sorry. Oh, technical difficulties. Okay, so basically we're going to break into groups of 3 or 4, and the question that you're going to ask each other in this small group is, share how you hook families. How do you initiate relationships with families? And there's strips of paper on your tables. Some are green, some are yellow. And I encourage you to take one and write down, first in the lower left corner, if you could just put number 1, because this is the first question. And again, remember, you're breaking into 3 or 4, and you're going to ask each other, how do you hook in families, and how do you initiate relationship with families? Okay. So here's the question up on the screen. You can stay at your table, or you can break into 3 or 4s. If you're wrapped up with your thoughts, could you please go ahead and raise your hand, put it up in the air. Carla's going to come around and pick it up from you, and we're going to put it on the wall. All right, so thank you all for sharing your thoughts, and then we're going to hear now from Rocio and hear a little bit about her story, how she came to Parent Voices, and we're going to walk back up to the front. And also, I'll ask her just a simple question, but first let's hear a little bit about her background.
So, my name is Rocio Alegria. I'm a mother of a 7-year-old boy named Jesse. I applied at 4Cs about a year ago, and I was the lucky one and blessed to be receiving the service from 4Cs because it has helped me a lot. It changed my life because thanks to 4Cs and the help that I receive, I'm able to go to school full time and be able to spend time with my son and like I said, work too, and I'm able to pursue my dreams, my goal. And as of now, I'm working toward my master's degree as social worker. Yes, and I'm working at CORA as a Community Overcoming Relationship Abuse, CORA, and I'm working there as an intern and providing therapy, group therapy, so, and I'm loving it. So and this is all thanks to 4Cs. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, great, awesome. So just one really quick question, Rocio. What are the thoughts for you in terms of how family engagement professionals can continuously grow the relationship and connection with families throughout the year? What would be some ideas?
I think being in contact with the parents, either by mail, by calling them, and letting them know that we are aware they're in their waiting list and that we care about them, through Facebook, through having like fundraisers, maybe going to the radio and promote about 4Cs and how parents can be involved with 4Cs and parent voices. I don't know, emailing them, sending them letters in English and Spanish, and yeah.
Awesome.
I'm
Yeah.
thinking. Thank you.
Yeah, so definitely we want to talk a little bit more about that piece. So the next question is going to be around strategies on how to continuously grow relationships and connections throughout the year. Sometimes we start off strong and we have all these plans and we're going to do this, this, and this. And then March hits and we're like out of smoke, you know? And so it's like, now what do we do? So let's break out again. If you want, you can move around. You don't have to stay in your spot. If you're cozy, you can stay in your spot. But I would encourage you to kind of move around. I know it's a little tight. And again, break out into 3s and 4s. And this conversation is going to be also put on a different strip. So please write number 2 in the corner of that sheet. So I'll give you guys about another 10 minutes. But before we do that, really fast, V, can you please stand up? And I just want to say thank you so much for coming today. V is a father who, I guess, would you say you're back with Parent Voices?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And we really want to just thank you and welcome you for coming here today. I know you took time out of your schedule, as all the parents did, and I really appreciate it. You're a celebrity, apparently. You're on the cafe poster. So can you just share really quickly how you got connected to Parent Voices, and then we'll break out into groups.
And if I could add, just broadly, so it's because we're here obviously to talk about Parent Voices, but it's really about family leaders.
Yeah.
So I know that it's bigger than Parent Voices. It's about how you support fathers as leaders.
Yes. Thank you for that. I'm just truly humble to be here. I know I see a lot of familiar faces. A lot has changed for me since last year. I'm a single dad of 2 boys, a 6 and a 5-year-old. But one of the most blessing is that I get to bring them up the way that I came up, and that's in a positive way. With Parent Voices, I was the unlucky ones. I went to 4Cs, didn't get approved, but I felt that the way for me to give back was to volunteer. And with me, that's the thing with me, is I don't tie myself to one organization. And you know, with all the politics that comes with it, I rather put my hands in different buckets. And what I mean by that is I would rather volunteer with the different organizations that are there to help the families. And that's what I do today with IHSD, Parent Voices. San Mateo, the Parent Voices San Mateo side, I was there with a couple. Me and Valerie was one of the mothers that first started that chapter. And I'm glad to see a lot more parents today join that chapter, because in the beginning it was just me and Valerie and Christine just trying to push it. But as I hear now, I thank Janelle for just keep pushing it, because it's a really positive thing. As I'm really proud of you going back to school. Valerie did the same thing too, and more power to you guys as a mom. But for me as a dad, it's really important for me because with male figures, as you can see in the room, there's only a couple. Charlie, I always see Charlie. That's a good buddy of mine. Charlie is my right-hand man that I do a lot of the father engagement with through IHSD. And me, I really want to encourage a lot of the male to get in this industry. And I say that humbly because I'm gonna just share a quick story. I volunteer a lot in my 5-year-old's classroom. And as you know, teachers, a lot of them are women. So when I volunteer, I love dealing with 4, 5, 6-year-olds because that's in my ballpark. So when one of the teachers was having a really hard time with one of the child, he didn't want to listen. So I called the child by his name. I said, looked him straight in the eyes, and I said, man, if there's anything bothering you, come to me. And he looks at me, and I asked the same thing that the teacher asked, and he did it. He did it, which is one, and he turned around and said, look, you did it. For me, that was really important because of the dynamics that they see. That, man, when they see male figures, it's almost like, man, a superhero that they look at. And for me, it's the same thing that my boys do with me. And that's what I want to give back to this community, to any organization I can, is just letting them know that we as male are here too. So I really appreciate all the work that you guys do, especially my man here, Charlie. Keep it going, keep it rocking. I'm right here by your side. And for all the organizations, keep up the good work. I know it's hard, but man, stay motivated, because imagine the families that you're working with and the families that you are helping in this county.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now we're going to definitely break into our groups. And we have the question up on the screen. Please go ahead and do that now, and I'll give you about another 10 minutes. All right. So we're going to wrap up. And if you're done, you can please hold it up so Carla can put it up. And Shay has been kind enough to oblige to please come up with me.
I'm Shay. I'm the school community worker at Fiesta Gardens Elementary School. It's my first year there, and it's the first year for the school to have a school community worker.
Yeah. So thank you for being here. So what we're going to do is we're going to invite an individual from your group to come up and read what's up on the wall. Shay's going to start us off, and then if you would like to find someone from your group to be able to come up, that would be awesome. Also, parents, please, if you feel so inclined to give feedback, interject, come up, please do so.
Okay, so this was my groups, and not all of these are my strategies. Only one of them is, but I get to read them. So one is creating special events, and specifically having food at those special events. Family nights and birthday celebrations for the kids. And then around, all of us in different ways talked about that around special events, whether it's ELAC meetings or family nights, we reach out to families beforehand. I do phone calls to the families who attended the last ELAC meeting. We talked about writing thank you cards as being a slightly less time-intensive way of contacting families after an event, so that it's not just like a one-off, I showed up, I did the thing, and now, like, kind of now what, right? There's that connection of like, we saw you, we know you were there, and we appreciate it. We also talked about in these forums where parents can come to share issues, whether it's an open forum or there's a theme, making sure to also share how the institution has responded to previous parent feedback, because parents don't always know the institutional changes that have happened unless you're getting the word out to them, or they're one of the specific people who's been served. You need to get that word of mouth started so families actually know that their feedback in these forums are creating change in the institution. And let's see. Oh, if you're really organized, having a calendar for the whole year with all the events, which I'm like, I aspire to my site being able to do that at the start of the year so that families can really plan ahead, and there's that sense of continuity for them through the whole year. And then just making phone calls that aren't about like specific events or trying to get families to do things, but reaching out and checking in on a situation maybe that was previously resolved and saying, how's that going? Is it still working for you? Do you need more help? Or checking in with families who there's an ongoing situation that's still affecting them. And even if you don't have solutions, just calling and saying, how are you doing? How is that going? I'm here for you. I hear you. And maybe that just gives them that emotional sense of emotional support to be able to continue and persevere until they found the resources they need to resolve the issue.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Shay. Yeah. Yes. Oh, a question. A question.
Yes. Yes. So my school is bilingual. It's an immersion. It's a Spanish immersion school. So everything we do, we send out English and Spanish. And I have, one of the reasons that I emphasize phone calls is that I have learned a number of our families, even though we're sending a letter home in English and Spanish, they're not literate in either language. Or recently had a meeting with a parent who speaks English with her family, but she's from Indonesia. She's not literate in English or Spanish. And so like making sure that we're making those verbal face-to-face or over the phone connections, and recognizing that Spanish and English doesn't cover it for all of our families. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Who else would like to share from another group? Could be a parent, could be, okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Veronica Lopez, and I am here with Help Me Grow. San Mateo County has officially launched, so we are available. We said follow up calls, text, especially consistency, not falling off. We tend to sometimes forget to follow up with families, or a lot of time passes by and then we just let them fall off. Making sure that we are connected with them, how they prefer to be connected with us, if that's via calls, text, social media, emails, or anything like that. Provide reassurance, making ourselves available. We know that we are all very busy and we all have an agenda, but sometimes that agenda doesn't exactly see eye to eye with a parent. So just keeping that in mind, and then just letting them know that we care and that we are here to help. So once again, just reassurance.
Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Anyone else? From another group? Go ahead. Come in.
So I'm Catalina with Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center, and we had parent cafes, creating and giving spaces for parents to share their stories, creating fun activities and socials, where it be ice cream socials, movie nights, collaborating with local businesses to host us and host families in their communities. And anything with food is a good incentive for people to come.
Thank you.
Yes. Oh, yeah. So collaborating with local businesses. So someone at our table said, trying to find local businesses that might support and give us space to host meetings where parents already go to. For example, like Sundays, parents are out with the family eating brunch, or and then trying to see if we could use their space and bring business, and then hopefully that can build a collaborative later down the line. Kind of like how you have connections at Hobie's. If we were to use a space like that, we also mentioned something with like IHOP or, Starbucks or anything, well, probably a more local coffee shop, but
Neighborhood place.
yeah, something to that effect.
Yeah, makes sense.
Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else? So we've heard from 3. Yeah. I'm not sure which is our. The one with the small lady. This one. Okay. Karen?
Yes. What do I do? Just hold it.
Yeah.
Okay, so, I'm Karen, by the way. I'm with First Five and that table. And so we had just a bunch of ideas, from like radio advertisements, making sure that the communication is at least in English and Spanish, right? Participate at like fairs, how there's art and wine fairs, and then sometimes there's like book fairs, and so there's lots of those. Sometimes there's different cities have like the fruit stands. What's it called? Farmers market. Yeah. There it is, farmers market. And staying in touch with the community, like Facebook or Twitter or those kinds of things. And then we talked a little bit about texting to stay in touch with families, and we realized that that could be like a really powerful tool, but it really depends on your organization and your group. So, I'm over here with some folks from 4Cs and South San Francisco School District as well. But in terms of 4Cs, it's really hard to have the staffing to actually respond to texts. However, if you had like a parent support group and you had like a peer-led effort, then the parents themselves could text each other in between meetings or what have you. So there's different ways that you can apply texting, we think, in different groups that could be really powerful. So did I leave anything out? Good? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. So, yes, Christine. Yes, please.
I'm Christine. Yeah, I'm with 4Cs, and I'm leading the Build Up for San Mateo County's Children Initiative, a child care initiative. Hopefully you'll learn more about that later. But we came up with some similar things and a little bit different, but regular scheduled activities to have some sort of routine and structure, and penalty-free participation. Families and clients have interaction that's all respectful. We want to be respectful of their time, plan events when they're able to come, when they're not working, in a location that's accessible, and also with food, childcare. Make it easy, kind of understand that they're getting off work, they're busy, they have their kids, they're hungry. To remember that we're on the same level as the client. Being respectful and just trying to connect. And being culturally respectful, receptive, and responsive. So, thinking about things that are in different languages, translators, and also celebrating the families that do show up. So if you have an event where it's a small turnout, don't look like disappointed, because the people who are there are the people who are supposed to be there at that moment, and make them feel good for coming out and connect with them on that intimate level. And I think that might be it. Oh, keep your word. Trust. Make sure you build trust. So if you're supposed to follow up, and try to follow through with them.
I just want to say really quick, that last piece that you guys just mentioned is really powerful, about keeping your word and building trust, because they're correlated. So when you keep your word, you build the trust. And I want to hear a little bit from the parents. Tell me if that's not true. Like building the trust and keeping the word when you hear something's going to be promised and then it's not followed through on. That totally devastates trust. Charlie, I see you're nodding.
No, I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah. In your experience, would you say that has been true?
Yes.
Yes. So follow through is key. I think we have one last table. If anybody wants to read it, okay. Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Erica, and I'm also with 4Cs. We just gave a pretty broad answer of going the extra mile and taking the time to really get to know your families and knowing what it is that they may need or trying to offer those things to them. So if someone's saying I'm kind of in between jobs right now, I'm in between housing, just remembering those key things of what they're struggling with to be able to follow up with them later on. Say if you talk to them 3 weeks from that last conversation, you can say, oh, how's your housing search going on? How was that interview? Did you get the job? Oh, congratulations. And just really showing that you care.
Thank you. All right. So thank you all for sharing. Thank you all for taking the time to be thoughtful and mindful and putting up your thoughts and ideas. Does anybody else have any questions, concerns, feedback? All right, great. So we're going to just talk really briefly, and this is going to be, after we have this question piece, time for you guys to reflect as individuals around this. This actually came about from part one in the cafe that we did before this one in regards to a question that was given to us as feedback. The question was in regards to how does a family engagement specialist work around this piece? So you provide everything available. Families say they're going to come. They say they're going to attend meetings, workshops, parent events, and then they don't show up. After all that we've tried, after all that we've done, they're not keeping their word on coming to these events. What can one do? So I want to invite you to individually, and if you want to talk to each other in your table group, that's fine as well, but to think about how are we supporting these families to be seen, heard, and make these decisions? How can we be strong for families by practicing humility? Do we have a power trip? Do we feel egotistical in the sense of like, how dare they not come to my event when they said that they were going to come, you know? And so I'm going to give a few minutes, and there's like a beige color piece of paper on your table so that you can take one each and have some time for individual silent reflection and write down a few thoughts on that. So again, the thought was, you've done everything you can. Families are still not showing up. You're feeling frustrated, betrayed maybe, about them not coming, and you don't know what else to do. What could be done differently? So now I have with me Valerie Higgins. As V said, Valerie is one of the individuals with Parent Voice who started back in 2003? 2003, 2004. So she has been a parent leader in this community for a very long time. And I'm so thankful for her and for V coming back to Parent Voices. I know it's been up and down, over the years, like with our chapter. But I'm so thankful for you both and your positive energy and just emerging that leadership in this community. As you can hear from the room, it's very needed. So I want to introduce Valerie and have her share a little bit about her story and how she came to Parent Voices, how she became a parent leader, and also I'll ask her a little question after.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me here, and thank you for bringing me here, Janelle. That's a part of meeting parents where they're at. I started with Parent Voices back when I was a college student at Skyline College, and I was a single mother. I'm still a single mother. Now I have 3, but I had 1 at the time, and I was pursuing my associate's degree and getting ready to transfer to San Francisco State University, and thank you. And so a person who I highly respected, her name is Linda Allen, worked at Skyline College, and she asked me to come on board to a Parent Voices Stand for Children Day event. And so that was my first experience with Parent Voices. And I didn't realize that the two were connected, but later when I went for services with the 4 Cs and had really a quick turnout because I was low income and I was receiving CalWORK, so I had a priority, and so I was able to get childcare pretty swiftly while I was attending Skyline College, and later while I was working and attending Skyline College. And so if it weren't for the resources that I received at 4 Cs and the advocacy experiences that I had with Parent Voices, I wouldn't be standing here before you. I wouldn't have achieved my associate's degree or my bachelor's degree or my master's degree as a first-generation college student. And I wouldn't have had the opportunity to work with numerous families, children and parents over the years that I've worked with families and parents for almost over a decade now. So I really can attest to how important childcare is and to how instrumental it is in terms of being a productive member of society, also in terms of having the confidence to, go up to Sacramento and to speak with, legislators who, you're putting a face to the story of mothers and fathers and parents and caregivers who really need childcare to just be able to do day-to-day things such as go to school or work or both. And so I was a beneficiary. And then later I was working, and I no longer qualified for the support. So I get both ends, you know. So I understand the importance of childcare for the low-income mother who's trying to get out of poverty. And then I also understand the importance of childcare for the working class family who can barely manage to pay for childcare to continue working.
That's right.
So I kind of understand, you know, the double-edged sword there. That's right. And we luckily had really high quality childcare that was affordable when I did have to pay at Skyline Community College, but it still wasn't affordable enough. And so I ended up leaving my job to take care of my children over the summer. So I have an up and down story of just really trying to be resilient and trying to manage day to day. I understand why parents show up and why they don't show up. I've organized parents for San Francisco Unified School District, or in collaboration with the San Francisco Unified School District when I worked for Parents for Public Schools. And so we would have, you know, we make all of the arrangements to get the food and even speakers and all of these different things, and sometimes just get a handful of parents. Right. But we continue to celebrate the parents, we continue to honor the parents and their children, and to let them know that we are parents also, and we understand the struggle, and we know it's real. And sometimes the children get sick, and sometimes the tire's flat. Sometimes you lose your job or leave your job, or, you know, so sometimes you move, sometimes you lose your housing. So there's a lot of different variables as to why parents don't show up, but in spirit, they care about their kids, they want to be there. And I really appreciate Janelle for, you know, meeting me where I was at, because I currently don't have transportation. So I wouldn't be here if it weren't for Janelle picking me up. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm just going to ask you a quick question.
Okay.
So my quick question for you is, was there ever a time where there was a relationship with an individual of authority who you found to be, in that moment, for yourself, a catalyst to either display your leadership, or you felt that that individual was maybe putting a barrier on you exerting your leadership as a parent?
Yes, I think there have been many times throughout my journey as a human, as a mother, as a professional, where people have really propelled me to stand up as a leader. And I usually find it in welcoming environments. I think where there's like-minded individuals, you know, we're all in this together, although we might have our own agendas. We all know that we need more funding for childcare. And for education, right? We know that the two are connected. And I don't think it's an either-or situation. I think it's both. And so I think for me, what's really helped to spark the leadership in me is to understand that I'm not alone. I know that there's other mothers and fathers and parents who, like myself, want a better life for their children and for themselves. And they depend on childcare, quality childcare for that. And also, decent, high-quality schools, right. You know. So I think for me, I've had a number of mentors at Skyline College, and I think that was a very critical point in my life, because I was a young single mother on CalWorks at the time, and I was only 19, so I was a transitional aged youth, and still figuring out womanhood and motherhood, and also getting acclimated with college life, and had dropped out of high school, so I only had a GED, so my self-esteem was low, my knowledge of who I was and what my purpose in society was low. And so to really be mentored by professors, by counselors, you know, other parents, students, just I think the whole wraparound services of just putting your arms around and saying, like, you have a community, you have a place, and although you might have had to stand in line for food stamps, or you might have had to stand in a food pantry line and ask for free food, like, that's very humbling. I'm gonna probably start crying, because even after my master's degree, I found myself in a food stamp line and also in the food pantry line. So you know, it's not easy, but to know that you have a community of people who understand you, who advocate for you, and who want the best for you and for your children, I think has really brought the best out in who I am becoming.
That's right. That's right. We're proud of you.
Thank you.
So I just want to say really quickly before you leave, wait a minute. So the other thing I just want to say, and I've said this at the last cafe, but I'll say it again, you know, everything is connected, because you were sharing with me in the car that your oldest is at USC now, wanting to become a doctor. And it's all connected. That leadership, that mentorship that was displayed to you as a young mom, and then coming up through the difficult times, is what helped you to be the great mom that you are today. And now look at your child, right? Displaying leadership, going forward, going towards something that's extremely difficult but challenging, but is going to do it as a consequence of an example of a mother who was a leader. So it's really about building communities. It is all connected. Every single individual creates a community together collaboratively. So I just want to remember that and highlight that. So thank you. Yeah. So as the third piece to this conversation, we're going to be breaking out into groups again, and this is question number 3. And the question is, how are we creating supportive opportunities for families to be heard, seen, and make decisions? Sorry? Yeah. And so once you do that and you go ahead and answer that question, you're going to go to your partner. So it's pairs of 2. And another diet to form a group of 4. Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
What's different about this question is that instead of at your table, we're going to invite you all to stand up and actually find a partner that's not from your table, that you haven't had a chance to speak with. So partner up, and then with your first partner, just you'll have like 5-7 minutes to talk about this question, and then we'll give you instructions for part 2.
Thank you for doing that, for going into your pairs and having a little bit of time to debrief a little bit about ideas on how we can be flexible, be humble, be patient, be understanding. I was saying earlier to Lucy, like, it's just life. Sometimes it's just life that gets in the way and a person can't show up. It doesn't mean they don't care or they don't want to or they take it for granted. It's not easy, you know. People have a lot of commitments, and especially parents, especially with parents with little ones and multiple children. So with that being said, we're not going to debrief the feedback. That's for you to think about and take with you, and to just kind of marinate and meditate on as you do your work. But I do want to invite Shay to come back up. What's special about Shay, and Carla was sharing with me, so she works at Fiesta Gardens, and it's a predominantly Latino community of children there at that school. A lot of monolingual families. You don't speak Spanish, do you?
I speak Spanish. I'm not totally fluent.
Okay.
Yes, she sounds good.
She is. Carla says she is. So what So what I just want to say about that, though, is that that's huge. You know, being a person who is not Latino, who's learned a language and is working in a community where you can speak to that community. That is monumental. So we're going to invite Shay to just talk a little bit about her experience at Fiesta Gardens and talk a little bit about inclusivity, her as being in the role that she is and working with that community.
Okay. So just want to say thank you to Carla and Janelle for bringing me up here so many times today to talk to all of you. I love the sound of my own voice, so I'm happy to. I would say, so there's a few things about my specific position and the history of my position at Fiesta Gardens that I think kind of set me up to make those connections, and then there are things about my personal history and my career experience that set me up to help make those connections. So I'm going to kind of I got the two themes to come at it from. And so the first thing to say is that this is a new position for Fiesta Gardens. I'm the first school community worker there ever. And so everything, like expectations are that this resource and support doesn't exist, right? So everything I do is above and beyond expectations, right? Next year, like the expectations will have grown and things might feel a little different. But right now, just having someone who makes those phone calls, parents are always like, oh, wow, thank you so much for calling me. Well, some of them are like, I want to get off the phone with the school person right now. But there are a chunk of them, who are just really grateful to have that contact. One thing as a white woman who didn't grow up speaking Spanish, literally just learned it in school, I always tell families, todavía no hablo con fluidez. So thank you for your patience with me. And that's, they're always like, sometimes they're like, no, you're great. Your Spanish is good. And sometimes they're like, oh yeah, for sure. And they slow down, and that shifts our power dynamic a little bit. And it also gives me permission to take risks, right? And to say things that I don't quite have the vocabulary for. And I think that's one of the really important things for connecting across difference is, and sometimes you need to give yourself a permission slip like that, like I do, of like, I'm not totally fluent. That's my permission slip to mess up several times and correct my grammar in the middle of a sentence and to go back and try to say something in a different way to get my point across. And that starts from me acknowledging that there is a difference, right? So we can't assume that we share things with families. And I do that with our English-speaking families too, if I don't assume that I know what their situation is. And I think and I don't assume that we have a shared experience. And so I ask questions. And I think asking questions and saying whatever you need to say to give yourself that permission slip so that you can take risks with families and, circle back and try to say something a new way, or try to communicate a point that you're not quite sure how it's going to land, right? To take those risks. And then I think the other thing that has set me up for this, I have a lot of experience working with communities that I am different from. Starting when I was in college, I worked at our community safety office, right? And I was at a small liberal arts college, a lot of really affluent students, and I was working with all middle class. Like my coworkers were all working class, blue collar. A lot of them were going to college or hadn't gone to college. And that was different from like my background, and that was different from the background of my peers. And so I think, if you are working with families that you feel similar to, finding communities where you are engaging across difference to build, whether that's your neighbors or, finding some volunteering, because having that experience of being different from the people that you're collaborating with is really important to build that default setting of I don't assume that I know you, right? Because it's really easy to assume shared experience if someone looks like you, or if someone sounds like you, or just because you assume that they're like everyone else that you're working with. There was something else I was going to say that I don't remember now. But if there are any questions or people want to share comments about their experiences.
So thank you for sharing about that. Really what it means is, from what I heard from what you said, is that you took a risk in different parts of your life where you've basically been like, I'm going to put myself in these settings where I'm not, maybe exactly the same as my peers, but I'm going to do it because it sounds like you have the heart for it and you care and you want to try to connect, which people notice that. People take notice of that, and it builds, I think, like a genuine bond and relationship. So going back to the whole point of, engaging parents, is that parents, people who we're working with, they can tell when you're genuine or not, and when your intention is genuine or not. And that has a big, huge component to deal with, like if they will show up or not. If they think you're just doing it to get numbers for a report, why? You know? If they think that you're just doing it because it's like, oh, I got to fill this quota, or I have to, you know, it's part of my whatever that I got to get done for my job, they won't. So I want to honor you and thank you for the work that you've done throughout your tenure and also here at Vista Gardens. It's very powerful, so thank you. As a partner in our communities. Yes.
I also wanted to say thank you for your humility. Like, to
Yeah.
step in there to first apologize and say, like, forgive me if my Spanish isn't. Because oftentimes as English speakers, we dominate the conversation with second, people who speak
A second language, yeah.
But to humble yourself and to speak in the native language, even though that's uncomfortable for you, I think is a testament to how committed you are to the work.
Yeah. And if you ever need Parent Voices to support you, we'll be there. Okay? All right. Anyone?
So I'm going to take off my SMCOE professional hat and talk as a parent, as a mother. So I'm a parent at Fiesta Gardens. I have a kindergartner and a second grader. And so I'm going to, like I said, just speak from a space of a parent and being in with all the parents and talking with them. We heard when this position was going to be, that they were going to hire somebody. And amongst families, we started talking about, what the ideal candidate, who would be the ideal person and blah, blah, blah. And when we met her, I'll be honest, like the first reaction was, she's not reflective of most of the community. I wonder if this is going to be a barrier. That was the initial reaction. However, in a very short amount of time, that was just wiped away as a concern because of the spirit and the way she shows up. You quickly forget, she's in some ways, the differences is in a way that it shifts the power imbalance. Like she makes herself vulnerable, very authentic, approaches families as wanting to be just curious and learn from them. She puts herself in more in a vulnerable position as far as speaking Spanish and knowing that her Spanish may, there may be some things that she may not be as strong in expressing herself, rather than just speaking English and having families kind of struggle with speaking with them. And I think all that is just kind of like a refreshing, again, families who are monolingual, recent immigrant, have, really kind of been drawn to Shape because of that energy and the way she shows up. And I'm just highlighting that because I feel sometimes we get nervous about, it's not so much about our similarities or differences, it's really about how we approach families, because I've been working in family and community engagement for many years, and I've been in other settings where someone in your position looks very much like the community and has very similar backgrounds and speaks the language, but maybe they approach families like, I know what you need. I know where you're coming from. I'll tell you what you need because we're so alike. So it comes from a place of a lot of assumptions rather than being curious and learning and being humble. So I just wanted to just underscore that, because for all of us to kind of check ourselves and see if we're operating from a place of being curious or if we're operating from a place of assumptions. We know these families. These families are like my family, and you just kind of assume what they need rather than ask. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
I was born and raised in Stanford, downhill or north of us, and I was born of know
Yeah.
you personally, but from what I heard, and I right away, this is kind of something that always comes to me. I'm like, she's down. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that in an articulate way, but that
She's an
feeling
ally.
of, like,
She's an ally.
yeah, she's down. She has my back.
Yeah.
And I'm a parent as well of multilingual or bilingual children.
Yeah.
And just that is huge.
Yeah.
Like she's down.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's huge, and I just want to also say, not just from the perspective of you being a person who doesn't look like that community, but you're an authority figure, right? And so you're coming at it from a place of humility, regardless of what you look like. That is like key and essential for families who already may feel like a little bit intimidated or nervous to approach you, because they know you can make decisions that could help them or not help them, and their parents are cognizant of that. They know, you know.
That's actually, I came into this position anticipating that being white and coming from a middle class background and being a native English speaker would be my barriers to connecting with families. And those have not felt as insurmountable as the fact of my being a school employee, especially when I'm connecting with families that aren't literate in English or in Spanish, who didn't go to school in their home country or only went to a few years of school, and they see anyone working in the school as having
Authority.
this huge authority that they're very respectful of, and they also find really foreign and intimidating, and finding ways to undermine that power differential has actually been the greater challenge.
Yeah, because it's also very much cultural, right? When you come from, like, let's say a Latino country, professors, school authority, they're esteemed. A doctor, these are individuals who are esteemed, who are seen as the authority figure. They have the answers. Whereas you come to the States, and I'm sure it's true in other countries as well. You come to the States and it's like, I have rights, and I can say, I don't want my kid in that class, or whatever. That's like not you. That's not common. But people like yourself and others who are here in this room who are coming from a place of humility and genuine concern and interest and asking the questions, that's what makes this community so great. And that's what makes our parents with us here today, being able to be involved and giving them that platform. So thank you, Lucy. Thank you, Valerie, Rocio, and V, and Charlie had to go, but we want to all say thank you for coming.